Thank you. Good morning, Oslo. How are you? You feeling energized? All right, so let's kick it off. I'm Krikor Maroukian from Microsoft Greece, Cyprus, Malta, and Romania services. I'm going to be very brief about the agenda and where I'm taking you today. It's mostly about the journey. So what we're going to cover is mainly what the main global current trends and challenges are around DevOps, what kind of issues we've dealt with in terms of value-based product development. I'll show you certain research results that I've been undertaking with Henley Business School in the UK, as well as what we mean by DevOps leadership, as well as maybe touch upon the topic of and discover together what's DevOps leadership resilience. So thinking of the Fortune 500 companies, only a fraction of those that existed back in 2000 exist today. The industry is at a precipice. A lot of the organizations that have been evangelizing the highly structured, truly hierarchical perspectives are now taking the majority of them vast decisions to embrace at least part of what we call agility and leanness. And in that, there is vast knowledge that the DevOps community is trying to expose through its conferences, meetups, just like the one we are experiencing today. So hopefully you can get something out of it. Now, when it comes to the two worlds as we've come to know them, development and operations, service design, service delivery, there is a lot more to it. There is quality assurance, there is testing, there is information security involved as well. Things we sometimes leave outside the equation, but we should tend to be more inclusive of this spectrum of roles within our organizations. The friction that exists in highly structured organizations today has to do with trying to deliver value from the service delivery perspective, so service operations. You get a call regarding a major incident, an ongoing incident, your beeper goes on, so you have to respond. But what truly happens inside the organizational dynamics is a blame game. And that blame culture has played a primary role in actually establishing a lot of the consensus that's now reached globally that things need to change. And they need to change drastically. It's about having the one philosophy on the one side of service design and development teams claiming that they must urgently and speedily secure business requirements and fulfill those requirements. And on the other side, there is the philosophy of reliability, stability from the operational perspective. So when these two, when this paradox is conflicting, how can we actually produce an equation that makes sense to everyone and everyone can actually contribute to the same targets and objectives for the organization strategy? What we've uncovered within Microsoft core engineering team, but I'm sure this is something that reflects within the organizational structures of even your organizations, not only within Norway, but throughout our region, is that these statements on the screen reflect a lot of the reality we live on a daily basis. So it might not be only of how things are thrown over the wall from developers to testers or from testers to operational roles, but it can be also part of information security. For those of you that did raise their hands on having read the book, The Phoenix Project, you must have understood the reality of being inclusive with those meeting invites for information security folks. I used to be a developer, and I hated operations. And then I went over to operations, and I hated developers. And then I became a project manager, and guess what? it's so true. And as a consultant, I witnessed the challenges we face, the cultural challenges, the roadblockers, the difficulties that every team has to undergo for their vertical specific aims and objectives. And they're trying to establish this sense of trying to attain what we call local metrics, key metrics, forgetting about the enterprise-wide metrics that where everybody should be collaborating and contributing in a unified manner. So at this point, right before I start defining DevOps for you, I would just like you to get your phones out and visit menti.com. Just enter this code and answer the first question I've got available for you. What does DevOps really mean to you? Okay, let's take a few seconds for everyone to gear up and answer this one. So I'm just going to bring on screen the live results as we get more answers in. Please do contribute on this one to make it as interactive as possible. Okay, I'm just going to give you a few more seconds. All right. So you can see the answers flowing in. I'm happy the live streaming is also recording. So for the folks who've joined us live, please, you're seeing this. So it's speed, collaboration, more collaboration, cultures between dev and ops, flexibility. Yeah, all of these are valid statements. Thank you. All right. So when Microsoft core engineering team transformed from the waterfall to agile structure, it took the team a lot of pain, which we've already discussed previously, in order to achieve the ultimate gains of when we reach the product development life cycle, full life cycle, in terms of time to market, time to recover from failure, etc. The things that the State of DevOps report has been showing very evidently. Now, this is the definition that Microsoft has come up. Okay, it's something we do feel very closely to, having undergone through the transformation from waterfall to agile and eventually to more lean practice and principle adoption. Now, the State of DevOps report, can you please raise hands, those that have read the State of DevOps report? Yeah. Maybe this question was asked previously as well. Not many. So for the 90% of this room that didn't raise their hands, please go ahead and read not just one, not just the most recent one, the last 3 or 4 years that have been coming out. The data in the State of DevOps report is valuable when it comes to understanding what have been the historical trends of DevOps practice and principle adoption versus where we're actually heading. Now, I'll give you a little bit more insight on that. So innovation it has been a key part of the State of DevOps report. You can see the trending here. It's the high-performing organizations versus the low-performing organizations have been delivering a lot more commitment on new work, like 66% more work, new work, as opposed to unplanned reactive maintenance work or major incident resolution work. Okay? And the same goes for testing as well. Software testing has experienced a similar trend. And we are now we have established the fact that continuous improvement is much more important than continuous investigation of failures due to production changes. Now, what I usually see within organizations is a huge mistake when it comes to addressing DevOps in 3 ways and saying that it's a technology, process, people issue, where you first acquire the tool chain, you then train people with the right skill set to use the tool chain, and finally make a move on the culture. Now, flipping that around is what makes things really work. And this requires a lot of senior leadership commitment as well within your organization. Microsoft found out that strong leadership commitment was essential to making the practice and principles adoption of agile and lean practices work, especially when establishing the new structure of product development, engineering, operations, where a cross-section of these three teams formulated the feature teams, the so-called feature teams. Now, bearing in mind that we're discussing this from lean IT and agile perspective, we have to also include highly structured approaches as well, like ITIL. The DevOps world wouldn't work as well without some of the highly structured elements in it. We still need service catalogs. We still need services to know what kind of services we are provisioning to our customers and end user communities. We still need to have in place contractual obligations in regard to our obligations to our customers in terms of service level agreements, as well as underpinning contracts with our service suppliers. Okay? And when it comes to the marriage of the professional and the academic world, I found out that there exist at least 6 academic definitions to DevOps. Okay, and most of them are focused on the definition of means-oriented empathy, cross-functional collaboration, similar to the terms you expressed in the question earlier. Now, from the academic perspective, that's fine, but what that fundamentally establishes is confusion within the industry. Because it's one thing to have 6 definitions, academic definitions. It's another thing to have another 100 or 200 from IT vendors, either of cloud provisioning services or IT vendors altogether, ITSM tool vendors, etc. Okay, so we have to be very careful of how we now move forward after the first decade of DevOps to establish a much more clear, concise, and accurate definition for DevOps. Now, throughout my research, I've established that there is a clear distinction between the communities of Agile, Lean, and DevOps. Each one celebrates their own practices and principles separately, but the selective intersection of these practices and principles make up for the highest value and gains that organizations have to both acquire internally as well as value delivered to their customers. Now, this is simply an almost exhaustive list of those practices, but if anyone has anything or any feedback to provide or would like to contribute to making these lists exhaustive, I would be very happy to listen to them. Now, the research undertaken with Henley Business School aimed to define what's value-based product development and whether leadership elements can actually exist within that notion. And the first set of the interview series consisted of 30 participants, mainly from the UK and Greece. The segmentation was to actually address customers and consultants in separate groups. So the groupings were actually measured against what kind of knowledge exists for highly structured frameworks and methodologies versus more agile, lean, and DevOps practices and principles. These 30 interviews yielded interesting results in terms of the agile and lean practices, having the most popular ones as Scrum, Kanban, CI, CD, pair programming, and value stream mapping. Now, in terms of principles, organization culture scored really high, I would say, even in the second survey I'll share with you in a minute. Measurement, making flow of work visible, mean time to market. Surprisingly enough, mean time to recover is not as high as we would have expected based on the State of DevOps report findings. Automation also up there. Now, when it comes to organizational teams as part of DevOps adoption practice and principles, obviously Dev and Ops are the preferred, but quality assurance and InfoSec scored really high as well. And you can see that the BOD and HR departments also play a big role in that adoption process. So commitment by the BOD and HR does make things a lot easier for DevOps adoption. Let's move on to DevOps leadership. What do you understand by DevOps leadership? Let's have a go and try to define leadership. What do you truly think that a DevOps leader role should have? The second survey indicated that almost 80% of people feel that there should exist a DevOps leader role. Some of them commented on the fact that we should actually be aiming for a different IT role, undertaking this leadership role, or even having an individual replaced by a group of leaders when the adoption is mature and that one single leadership figure is no longer required. So interesting results have come out of it, but I'd like your view as well on that. So please take a second to, I'm just gonna, sorry about this, I'm just gonna, So I've just unlocked the second question. Please go ahead and answer it. I'm just gonna give you a second there. Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. It should work. No, it's not. All right. Well, I'll present it later. Let's move on so that we're on time. So the online survey that went out was actually one that was where participants from EMEA region mainly came in to express their opinion on 20 different questions. You can witness the segmentation. So most of the participants had were experienced professionals, and mostly from Europe and Middle East. So when asked of the techniques that are used within their organization, expectedly I saw that version control and issue tracking is the ones that have scored the highest. But interestingly enough, trunk-based development scored really low, and that has been one of the main areas where Microsoft has benefited immensely when it came to moving to the agile world. Now, in terms of DevOps practice adoption levels, you can see that the classic key performance indicators, critical success factors, scored high. But I was really happy to see that behavioral metrics are gaining ground. And this is probably one of the first of its kind research that indicates that behavioral metrics are now much better understood by organizations. And by that, I mean that we're no longer only trying to move away from the traditional metrics of number of incidents caused by production changes, a number of problems associated with changes, etc. We've already moved to metrics, DevOps metrics like time to recover, time to market, deployment frequency versus deployment duration, etc. And the third phase of that, I believe, is behavioral metrics, where you're now counting the fraction of people who are claiming sick leave prior to a new practice adoption meeting or workshop, for example, or the number of times that the senior level execs actually visited the development team, environment, workplace, or operations workplace to actually find out how things are developing for them, or even uncover the root cause of a major incident. Those are the behavioral metrics we're really interested in terms of eliminating waste for lean practice adoption and identifying how we can maximize value delivered to our customers and end users. So when the participants were asked to prioritize a set of practices and principles, they came up with organizational culture scored by far the highest. Employee engagement, which regards employee satisfaction, utility, commitment, etc., came in second. Automation came in third. Okay, we can see CI/CD there as well, and VSM. Now, the primary roles that are involved in the decision-making process of DevOps were identified as C-level execs, and that's usually what happens with highly structured organizations still. But as we witness higher maturity levels of DevOps adoption, we tend to see that either product owners or development team leaders or even the developers themselves become the decision makers. And there was also a strong focus on actually having a DevOps leader role, hence the question to you. Okay. All right. So for those of you that haven't gone through the DOI, DevOps Institute upskilling report, I'd strongly suggest that you do. It very much shows how the current trends around the skill set required for all three layers of people, practice, principles, and finally technology products is shaping up. So I strongly recommend that you go through this report and understand the bits and pieces. The top 3 must-have skills have been identified as automation skills, process skills, and soft skills. I would say that automation, as you witnessed, as well as soft skills, has been also scoring high in the research, in the value-based product development research I shared with you as well. Okay. So let me check and see if we've got. All right. So in terms of, it seems like I won't get the third question in, so I'm just going to go and answer what's on your top of your mind as to what does DevOps leadership resilience mean. Well, before we do that, let's just try to define leadership resilience for a second. Leadership resilience is defined as the effective leader's capacity to bounce fast from adversity, frustration, misfortune, by staying calm, maintaining well-being, and continue work skillfully with others, okay, to contribute to the effective work and lives. So that is very inclusive of how we are trying to approach what we call high-pressured environments. In other words, stressful environments. Pressure is good, but stressful environments are not. So we are, what we are experiencing in high-pressured environments are also intense emotions. And in that sense, leadership resilient leaders have to address those very same physiological and neurological aspects when it comes to identifying what kind of character traits their leadership status should possess. And some of them can be something like this. And I would very much like to find out more about what these character traits can be. And I will very much welcome you to actually take the online survey. So please do scan this QR code, take the online survey, and represent Norway. It's a country I don't have on my stats, at least for now. And hopefully we can make Norway inclusive in the set of results that will be coming out in the research. And why not share this with the wider DevOps community in Norway in a year's time. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention.